Hi, I'm Erica Lucas, and today on the Vaster podcast, Vast member Beverly Carmichael sits down with Alexis Higgins, CEO of Tulsa International Airport, whose career challenges everything we think we know about growth and mobility. What makes Alexis' story so compelling is this. She spent 26 years at the same organization, in the same city, and worked her way from a support role to chief executive officer. That's almost unheard of in today's world. We're used to thinking growth means moving. New companies, new cities, bigger titles, somewhere else. But Alexis built her career differently, choosing depth over constant movement. She invested in relationships, stayed visible, and grew her influence over time. Alexis' journey is a real-life example of what happens when you build trust and credibility inside one ecosystem, and then you let that compound. In this conversation, you'll learn about what actually goes into running an airport, and you'll also hear about leading through uncertainty, navigating change, and having difficult conversations with clarity and kindness. Alexis also talks about mentorship, both giving it and receiving it. She also shares about being one of the few women leading a major airport and about what it means to stay prepared for opportunities long before they officially exist. If you ever wonder whether staying can be strategic, or if you're trying to build influence where you are, this episode is for you. Here's Beverly Carmichael in conversation with Alexis Higgins. For their full bio and show notes, go to www.vesther.co/podcast. And if you enjoy the episode, share it with a friend and don't forget to leave us a review.
Give us a little education on airport operations and what all goes on. Most of us think of an airport as just a place where airplanes land and take off, but it's more than that. And I've learned so much about it, a lot of it from Alexis. So I'd like for her to give us a little education on airport operations, if you could, Alexis.
Yeah, happy to do that. Thank you, Beverly, for the invitation to be here and everybody for logging in. You know, the airport's a very dynamic environment and it's exciting, I think, because every day is a new challenge. A lot of people just think about planes landing and taking off. And I always tell my team, that's the baseline. We have to make sure planes can land and take off at both of our airports every single day. And as long as that's happening, okay, we can deal with any challenge and go forward. But there's so much more to it than that. So we are managing infrastructure with miles and miles of pavement, of electrical equipment, everything that you think about for a 500,000 square foot terminal building. We are a landlord to 220 tenants. We are responsible for developing over 4,900 acres of property here at TUO, and all of the financial background that goes into supporting that operation and funding, hundreds of millions of dollars in capital improvement. All of that is important to us. And then we also are a little city within a city. So we have our own fire department here. We have our own police department. We take public safety extremely seriously, of course, with TSA and all of our federal regulators. We have the DoD work with the Army Air Guard and then the Air National Guard with the F-16s. There's just a whole plethora of different types of operators on our property that we get to work with day in and day out to support their critical missions. And so it's a fun place to be. I think that's why I've been here for 26 years, is because every day goes by in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, we're going to get to that 26 years because that's something that I really want to talk about. One thing that I think people are always curious about, Alexis, and that is airlines decide where they fly. I know places I've lived, I've always had a city. I thought, gosh, I wish there was a nonstop service to this city or that city. Talk to us. How does that work? I know in 25, we announced a new service with even a new airline, but how does all that work and what's your involvement in that?
Well, we are our community's biggest cheerleader when it comes to air service development. And so our role is to make the business case to the airline that their next best investment for air service is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And oftentimes that starts with looking at the community and telling the community story. So we're talking about, population growth, growth of the business sector, the growth in disposable income. And all of these different facets come together to make the case to an airline that Tulsa is that city. But there's more to it than even that. We look at the airline's network strategy and have to figure out, how do we align with their growth strategy? And then we target our pitches to airlines based on where we get alignment with their growth. And then we look at, do they have aircraft on order? What does that look like in terms of right sizing aircraft to demand for a market? Our goal is to go out and make the case to bring an airline to Tulsa so that it'll be sustainable. So we don't want to go recruit an airline that's going to have, 747 aircraft, because that's not going to be the right size aircraft for Tulsa. But just finding those matches where we can. And we have had a lot of success recently. We had 4 cities announced late last year in October. So we have Seattle, San Diego coming on board with Alaska Airlines. That was so exciting to get Alaska Airlines to Tulsa. And then we have Cancun and Minneapolis coming on board with Sun Country, our first international destination, which I was super happy about because we built a customs facility without having a commitment for international service. And just to have that before the customs facility is even complete was a win for our community. So many different things. It can take years to convince an airline to make that investment. And that was the case with Alaska Airlines. We started working on that in 2011. And this is the
Wow.
case at airports across the community, across the country. I mean, like, airports are out there making these cases. And that's why it's such a big deal when we get a win.
Yeah, that was really exciting. The 2025 was really exciting. I of course I've worked at Southwest Airlines for 10 years, so I've probably, and I'm a very frequent traveler. I've probably been to most airports in the country. And I have to say, I want to brag on Tulsa a little bit, because, and not just because it's my hometown, but I've always been so impressed with just the operation, the people, and all of the airlines, because I do fly them all. And I would say most important, significantly, the cleanliness of the Tulsa airport. I don't know how many of you all, by the way, might have attended the Lionel Richie concert. When was that, Alexis? A couple years ago?
Yeah.
Uh, you were there, and I was there, and we didn't even know each other at that time. You want to tell them what Lionel
Yeah.
Richie said about
You
Tulsa?
guys, okay, so we never do this, but I took our leadership team to the Lionel Richie concert, just because it had been, a heck of a season after the pandemic, and we've just been focused on capital programming, and I was like, we need a break. So we were at the Lionel Richie concert together, and Lionel Richie talks about the airport and how great it is. And I was like, oh my gosh, I did not pay him to do that. And so it was just a cool moment for my team to be there and get that recognition in such a big way, because we all take so much pride in the work that we do. We have high standards, and it's nice to hear that others see it. So
Yeah,
that
that
was
was really cool. I was excited about that. And I remember in part of what he said, he's like, "Where do y'all keep y'all's trash?" Because I've never seen any trash in Tulsa at the Tulsa airport. So anyway, we are lucky to be in a city and a state where the airports are really, really quite extraordinary. So you touched on this a little bit, but you have been at working for the airports for 26 years. And that's a long time. That's a long time, but it's really a long time for anybody to work in one place. So talk to us about your career. Maybe did you, was aviation kind of what you were going for? And we'd love to know Did you go there with aspirations of becoming the CEO?
Yeah, no, I did not. I uh, worked in high school and college at a law firm, and I interviewed for a job at the airport to be the legal assistant. And I went to TU, my degree's in marketing. I enjoy marketing, and the marketing director sat in on my interview with the attorney, and the marketing director is who hired me. And so I ended up as a entry-level marketing assistant, and a couple years down the road, got a promotion to marketing coordinator, and then had the opportunity to apply for the director of marketing role. And honestly, I mean, public speaking was not my favorite thing at all. So I had to get a little bit of courage to get over that hump. And then did that for 11 years. And I did have a great mentor who told me, I think you'd be a good airport manager, and you should start thinking about getting your AAE, which is the equivalent of like our CPA. And he was a pilot, so I had never even thought about that. I had never thought I would take that path, but I ended up going through the accreditation process, which was, a challenge and a big win for me personally to get through that. And decided, I think I could be an airport director one day. But the challenge about being the airport director, especially of your hometown airport, is that the job doesn't come open very often. But I have waited it out. And in 2017, I got the opportunity to apply for the role. And I didn't get it the first time. The board picked someone else. And so I enjoyed, learning from that new director who was very different from the one I had worked for. And then when he left, I emailed the board and said, this is my turn. Like, I'm ready. And they didn't even do a search. They promoted me to the role, and I have been here ever since. And so, in thinking about this podcast and thinking about women in airport leadership roles, there's only 15 women in the CEO role of airports for the top 100 airports. And as I was looking at all the names, over half of them are leading their hometown airport. And there's a distinction, I think, between women and men in this area, because as mothers or as caregivers, we tend to want to stay close to family, right? We don't want to move all over the country. I mean, some do, like about half of the women in the leadership roles have. But you see many of the men go from airport to airport, and that's how they progress in the organization. And so it's just an interesting observation that I made, reflecting over the past couple of days and why that is. And we take a lot of pride, not that they don't take pride in leading their airports, but certainly a different level of commitment, I think, than what other people feel in their roles. So
Yeah, I love that. You talk about just that you gave us the little stat about women who lead airports, because I wasn't aware of how many it was. We had at our best session, we had one of your colleagues as a guest speaker, and I wondered if the two of you were the only women CEOs. So it's good to know that at least there's 15. We need some more, but 15 is a good start.
Yeah, Christina's such a great role model for many of us, and we all want to be like Christina. Because she's just very powerful and in her convictions, and we have a network. So we have a female CEO networking group that we get together every other month and just talk about hot topics. And then once a year we do a retreat. Actually, I hosted them all in Tulsa last year. And it's just a great resource for us to be able to lean on each other and feel comfortable in asking questions that maybe we wouldn't go to a male counterpart and ask, And so it's a real tight group. And then we also, as part of that network, we invite what we call number twos, or people in the organization who are on that pathway into leadership. We invite them into our group every other month or every other session so that they can get some insight into the challenges and we can help them identify future opportunities. And I think that that's an important role we have as leaders, is to always provide an entree for others into the next level.
Yeah, it is, and it's so very important, and it's important to have it in an environment where you feel it's a safe space as
That's
well.
right. Yeah.
You earlier talked about when your rise to in the organization and maybe the role of a mentor or mentors. We've been talking this month, particularly about the role of relationships and connections that you make and how that impacts, your career and your life and what have you. Talk about what the role of, relationships, connections have made sort of in your success, both in your life and your career.
Yeah. I would say number one, it really meant a lot to me to have people come to me and tell me, I see you doing this. I see you doing great at the director of marketing. Like, I had 4 or 5 male coworkers come to me and say, you need to go for this. And then even when it was time to pursue the next opportunity, I cannot say it enough. And I encourage my team, like, always encourage people who have the capability, capacity, desire to try something at the next level. Because I think for some people, it's really difficult to make that leap. They think about all the reasons why they're not ready instead of all the reasons they are a great fit. And so that's been important to me. I think the other thing, I heard a woman speak at a Women in Aviation event, and she said, like, be the one to someone. You don't have to be all to everyone, and you don't even have to be, to a quarter of them, but pick someone, and be the mentor to someone. And so I've taken that advice and thought, like, I want to make sure I am being intentional about mentoring others the way I was mentored. That's really important to me. And then
Yeah.
as far as personally, I'm just very grounded by my family. And so I have my mom who lives very close to me, and my daughter. And not that, I mean, my husband and son are great too, but I just feel like as women, I can certainly connect with them and vent to them and say things that I would definitely wouldn't share with my son in the same way. And so just really, we have a very close-knit family, and that's very important to me.
Yeah, I love all of that. The when I think about my own career, I mean, so many things, and I would probably say most things that I ultimately did, I never would have done, but for somebody that encouraged me or that said, "Hey, you could do that. Have you ever thought about this or that?" I mean, and that's happened. I mean, I would say that started happening for me in high school. I can think of college professors who did that, and by the way, Anita Hill was one of those people. But I love that, and I love that we pay it forward too. I spend an awful lot of my time doing that because I know how valuable it was for me, just like what you said. So that's terrific. Um, I've been on your board, I guess, a relatively new member of the board, which by the way, I love. It is, of course, I love aviation. I spent 10 years in the airline industry, but more importantly, it is really an opportunity to, one, feel connected to my hometowns, which is important to me. But I've also, whether it is, the airport here or any organization I've been in, I have just been um, amazingly impressed with this organization and the people, the culture, the employee engagement, the level of expertise that they have. I actually ran into the former mayor, not Mayor Nichols, but the former mayor, and he told me that this airport board was the only board that he never had any turnover in his entire 8 years. And so I didn't realize it, but I'm just on the premier board of the city. But it's because of the people and the leadership. So talk a little bit about your people, what they do, and all of those things that it appears that are just so wonderful, and that certainly I've observed during my time on the board.
Yeah. Well, so organization has 143 people, but at the leadership table, there's 11 of us. And I think, when I stepped into the role, there was a bit of a shift because I did some things that honestly hadn't been done. Like we started setting goals and creating a business plan. And I had an employee who had never written goals before. And so just coming in and getting the opportunity to level set expectations through leadership coaching. I mean, I invested quite a bit in bringing in a coach to help describe what a high performing team looks like, and then challenge, some of the thoughts like, debate or conflict is an important part of any thriving team. And we would sit around the leadership table sometimes, and everybody would always be in agreement. And I often think of that movie where they're like, we just need one dissenter, right? Like, who's going to challenge the status quo? And so now when we're in meetings, we all feel free to share our candid thoughts. And I think that has made our team stronger. Knowing that we're all committed to the airport, we have leadership team commitments. And our number one commitment is we will do what's best for the airport. And many times that means we don't do what's best for Alexis Higgins. We don't do what's best sometimes we don't do what's best in the best interests of, let's say, the city of Tulsa. And that is an example of the fire department. When we outsourced our fire service, that was a controversial decision, but it saved the airport $1 million a year. And so just understanding and level setting our key commitments to each other, that we hold each other accountable to, has been a great shift, I think, in our organization over the past 7 years or so. And then we're never done. And they understand now that there's always something new to do. And at first it was like, oh, well, aren't you going to take it easy after, we did X, Y, and Z or whatever. And I was like, no, there's always more work to do. So even though we have the largest project in the airport's history with the air traffic control tower underway, we have our customs facility being built. There's always something else to be thinking about on the horizon, or a challenge we need to be thinking about for the future of our airports. And so just having the highest caliber people around the table who are way smarter than I am when it comes to their aspects. And so our engineering director is great. Our operational team is the best. I mean, we're consistently recognized from a regulatory compliance standpoint as being the first or the best in many different areas. And so we continue to challenge ourselves to provide a level of expertise that sets the bar for the rest of the industry. I don't know if you guys follow the Quick Trip commitments, but they have a desire for excellence and a desire for perfection. Even though it's hard to reach perfection, our team has a desire to provide the best experience, no matter what time of day our customers happen to be in the building, so that it's consistently meeting that brand expectation. And it's just great to be on a team that's aligned and has a desire to achieve big things together.
Yeah, you guys are really, really doing it. That's for sure. And you don't have to believe me, believe Lionel Richie, you talked a little bit about how kind of the organization has changed over time, especially under your leadership, but talk about the industry. I know, having gotten now closer to it than when I left the industry in the early 2000s. Talk about what has changed in the aviation and airline and airport, the industry as a whole over time.
Yeah, certainly the pandemic was just such a challenge for everyone. And
Yeah.
for a long time, we were measuring success by pre-pandemic and, compared to 2019. And so it's been nice to like get over that hurdle finally and focus on success year over year and growth year over year. I think for the industry, it's been interesting to see the impact that the regulatory environment has had recently on our operation, whether it's the federal shutdown that has caused disruption across the nation in terms of air traffic demand. We certainly took a hit from the shutdown. Or how the airlines are being so regulated when it comes to delays and the impact of those delays on customers. We're seeing airlines be a little more guarded when it comes to flight scheduling. So they're pre-canceling flights instead of getting customers to a destination and having delays in transit. But I think the big surge has been the shift in the low-cost carrier, and we're seeing more of a divergence between the legacy carriers, the traditional carriers like American and United, and then the low-cost carriers, which are the ones like Sun Country and Allegiant. And before, Southwest was really considered a low-cost carrier, and they've now kind of taken the path more of a legacy carrier with a different brand commitment than the others. But it's just interesting to watch as the airlines evolve under this new regulatory environment and continue to make the focus, of course, is on profitability, and so it's good though. I think we're moving in a good direction. I would certainly like to see more carriers in the marketplace, because more competition, I think, is better for everyone.
Absolutely, it is. By the way, I'm supposed to be monitoring the chat, and I just looked at it. So if you all have questions, feel free to drop them in there, and we'll try to cover them because we want to make sure that we answer whatever questions are on your minds. So one thing that sort of from a macro standpoint, Alexis, every day I learn about somebody who's lost their job, layoffs, and you hear about hundreds and sometimes thousands of layoffs. And in a couple of cases, I know people who have been laid off, and it's taken longer and longer to get a new job. This environment is it's different, and I think about it affecting perhaps women even more so. I know that the federal government layoffs really did. Women took a hit on that quite a bit, but talk about kind of how, if you don't have to be an expert on this, nobody is, but, it's affecting a lot of people. What thoughts do you have or how people can kind of navigate their way through this sort of unusual time of job loss?
Yeah. Well, I've seen it, within my network. I've had friends, especially in the tech field, that have found themselves recently unemployed. And what I appreciate that I've seen them do is, number one, they share that. I think there's no shame in the fact that there are layoffs or downsizing. But to let people know that you're looking for your next opportunity is one of the best things that you can do. And then I think just focus on the action that you can take related to, finding your next fit. And the destination, you'll get there, but like taking it day by day and saying, what action can I take today that helps get me there? And networking, I think, and networking by that, I mean like reaching out to people that you trust and saying, can we have coffee, or can we get on a Zoom call and just catch up? And I can share with you kind of what I'm thinking and get your input. Like, do you think I'm going in the right direction? Or do you know anybody in this space who you could introduce me to? I think would be helpful. I enjoy making those connections. I think I can get you the introduction, and then it's, from there you can forge that relationship going forward. But unless people know that you're needing assistance or wanting assistance, they may be hesitant to just offer it. And so in my mind, the most important thing you can do is just let people know.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I do think that that's something that I hate to stereotype, but I think women are less willing to do that. We are such nurturers, and we're almost always the person doing the helping, that we are reluctant to ask for help ourselves. And that's really something. I think the other thing, I don't know how you feel about this, but the other thing is, when you do reach out to someone, I know that, it's one thing to, it's hard enough to say, okay, reach out to somebody. I'm looking for another job. I'm looking for this or that. But I think it's important to tell the person what you think they can do. Because sometimes when you hear it, you're like, I'm happy to help, but what do you think that I could do? What would you like for me to do? And I think that that's helpful, rather than to just say,
Yeah.
let's network. Like, tell me because the other thing is, you might find that, gosh, I'm not really the right person for that, but I do know somebody who could do that. I'll introduce you to that person. So it's so many things. I think we've just got to get real comfortable. And I think, particularly in this environment, just the old traditional way of getting jobs and getting the next job is just not the way that it's going to be. It probably hasn't been that way anyway, but it's really not that way now. And we hear people say, it's not who you know, it's who knows you, you
Mhm.
know. And so I think that's really important. I think we can all really think about that, because we all know somebody who's in that situation. And like I
Yeah.
said, it's people are experiencing much more time between jobs now than they probably ever were. And
Right.
that can be very concerning.
Just
Coming
to
from
add
a
that,
Oh, go
like,
ahead, please.
maintaining visibility is really important. I think, any type of social events or opportunities, industry trade events, anything that you can do to continue to be plugged in is also helpful. So,
For sure. For sure. And that's the other thing, back to kind of what we're focusing on this month is, you think about, I mean, I can remember back in the day, when people had business cards and all that, and particularly when I worked at the law firm, they would say, you go to this event and you get their card, and you come home and it's, you count how many cards you got. And that was somehow the, measure of success. And the same thing with LinkedIn connections and all that. Just because you have a lot of connections doesn't mean they're doing anything for you. You
right.
know, we were talking about, you can have, it can be a mile wide and an inch deep, and it just doesn't help you at all. So I do try. As you learn that, I try to focus on meaningful connections, deeper connections, and there probably are going to be fewer connections, because the truth is, you can't give the same focus to all of those those connections. There's just not enough hours in the day. You
That's
know,
true.
um, I'm trying to track the questions in the chat. I think we're good. So I guess staying with the sort of macro environment, just thinking about big, even bigger, just our entire, the economic uncertainty, kind of there's political unrest, there's just fear and nervousness about what's happening in our country. It's easy to really, get really just that kind of dominating what you do and somehow distracts from your day job and what you have to do. Um, Again, sort of be the make us feel better about how we're dealing with that situation, because I think we all see it's all happening around us, but make us feel better about this environment we're living in.
Well, I can only tell you what I do to navigate that space. And I honestly turn it off. I will watch the news in the morning because it tends to be a little more direct and state, the even the local and national news in the morning. But I just cannot take in everything that's happening around the country and allow that to weigh on me, because I have a mom who needs my assistance. My daughter needs my assistance. She's expecting my first granddaughter. I have a job that's pretty demanding. And so I just have made the intentional decision to say, look, I have a lot of feelings about it, but I can't control so much of it. I can focus on what I can control. And then when I do want to, I go to the Wall Street Journal to read about aviation issues. I picked where I get my news from so that I can really focus on the pieces that add the most value to me. And of course, the local news is important to me too. But I have certainly seen it weigh on a lot of people, and my experience is differently than some others because of who I am and my background. But I have employees today that are on working here on an I-9, I guess is the official term. And so it's very heavy for them, like getting the approvals to be able to continue to work here and waiting on that. And so my role, in my opinion, is to just continue to let them know that they're valuable to us and that we support them. And, we will do whatever we can to help them through this process. And to know no matter what happens, we will do everything we can to reserve their job for them so that when they do get that ultimate approval, they'll be able to come back here and continue to contribute to our organization. But it's hard to navigate for everyone. And as a leader, I think it's especially important that you check in with people, but you also keep people mindful of what they can control.
Yeah, that is so important because and by the way, that is a strategy that I use sometimes. Sometimes I do have to turn it off. It's just it just can get you down, and then it just keeps you down. And I love, that the reality is we have so many other things that we've got to focus on other than our job. Caregiving is something that women, mostly women, have to have responsibility for children, parents, ill family members, all of that. And it's just hard to carry all of that all the time. So thank you for that advice. Thinking about just women and just leadership and your experience, but what advice, we all are women leaders in some capacity. Many of us are entrepreneurs, executives, what have you, but we've got our careers ahead of us. So maybe a piece of advice that you would say you want everybody to hang on to, from Alexis Higgins.
I think, one of the things that is so important to me is that you get joy out of the work that you do. So, and of course, I love the work I do at the airport. I get energized from it. But I also have found that I enjoy volunteering as well. And so I made the decision to be a reading partner volunteer. This was like 7 years ago. And to walk into an elementary school just totally changes your mindset. It changes the weight that you feel. It kind of is a nice distraction, right, from the commitment that you have in your role. And so finding an opportunity to volunteer for something that you believe in and that just gives you that mental break from whatever is weighing on you as your paid gig, so to speak, I think has been extremely helpful. And so I often go back to employees who are struggling and I ask them, like, do you get joy out of the work you do? Because if you're not getting joy, then how can I help you find that in something else? Because, you work for a long time and there's no reason for you to spend your days doing something that doesn't fill your cup. And so that's the advice I give to my kids. I think my husband's a blue collar worker. He's a mechanic and it's a hard job. And so we have instilled that in our kids. Like, you have to do something you love, and otherwise you're not doing it right. And so I just encourage people to find that for them. So.
Yeah, I love that. And that is so important. And it is surprising how many people hate their job and hate their profession, and they do it anyway. And it's just such that's got to be draining. Whenever I found that I was no longer enjoying my work, I went and found something else. Life is too short to spend it not being happy, doing what you do. So I think that is just so critical.
Jess, and feel free to add context if needed, but Jess asked, what's an important lesson you've learned related to handling difficult people or complicated or interpersonal dynamics, such as hard conversations, obstructionists, dealing with egos, resistance to change, etc.?
Yes. I have to tell you, moving into a leadership role, this was the most surprising piece of it to me that I did not have visibility to in my role as marketing director, is the fact that you have to have hard conversations. But my commitment is to be clear, is to be kind. And so I approach it from that perspective. Like, I want to be very clear about expectations. I want to outline what success looks like. And if you are not willing to meet those expectations, again, then let's talk about an alternative path for you, if that's the desire. I think many times it's uncomfortable to provide feedback, but you have to get comfortable with that, because many times, in order for the person or the situation to be resolved, you just have to be direct. And my approach, we have a newer HR director here, and something that I love that she does is she wants to do run-throughs and practice conversations before we have them. And I had never done that before, but I really have found that that's helpful, to sit down with her and go through that. So practice having tough conversations, find someone that you trust that will give you feedback, and then take that action. Because if you don't, the rest of the people around the organization are going to see that that's an acceptable, path forward. And that's certainly, creating conflict in a bad way, or creating tension that's not productive to the organization, cannot just left go unchecked. So
can I just kind of dig into one thing you said? You mentioned that you have to get comfortable being able to have those feedback conversations, which I totally agree with. I'm curious what your approach was to actually getting comfortable with it. Like, we hear that a lot, and I'm curious about, like, what did you do to get comfortable with it?
I think it just comes with preparation, number one. So really thinking about what you want to say, what actions they are doing that are driving the path in the wrong direction, right? Or, how are they contributing to negativity in the workplace? How are they basically taking the team off course. Focus on the actions that other person's doing versus feelings. It has been helpful for me. And then having regular like follow-ups, checking in the day after, 3 days later, 5 days later, just being intentional about follow-up conversations to make sure that everybody has alignment on what success looks like. To be clear is to be kind is always the way to go. And if people don't know what those expectations are, then they cannot meet them. And so put some thought into what is going to be said before you actually have the conversation is how you get comfortable. And then just honestly, the more you do it, the better you get at it, the more comfortable you get at it.
First of all, Alexis, I wanted to commend you because the mere fact when you were talking about how to deal with the heaviness of the environment that we're operating in, I love that you said focus on what you can control, pick your lane, because we can't take care of everything and everyone. But you also acknowledged that other people within your organization may be feeling even more emotions because their safety is directly threatening, right? Whether it's their
Absolutely.
immigration status. So I just wanted to commend you because I think that not all leaders or CEOs take that into consideration, right? And
Mm,
so they just continue to operate. And I don't think that's helpful. And consistently, we hear from several of us members, and not everybody's having the room to even feel anything at the workplace. So I just wanted to commend you on that.
yeah.
The second thing, and my question leads to one of the reasons most women join our network is when they're experiencing a career transition.
Mm,
And you've talked about how you've chose to stay within the same industry, even within the same institution. But you also mentioned how, you've seen male colleagues get promoted faster because they did take the risk or they did move around. And
yes.
with the new generation coming, where you're seeing this shift in pattern where they're not really valuing loyalty or staying within the same institution or organization,
Yeah.
how would you coach women who are going through career transitions and what they need to think about as they're considering whether to stay or move?
I think number one, y- you always have every situation is different, right? So I would just encourage any employee to think about like what do they want to achieve, what is their goal, and their goal today might not be the same as their goal in 5 years. And so in fact, our goal today, our goals for our employee retention are different than they were when I started in my role 7 years ago, because we have seen a shift. We have, even though we still have many long tenured employees here, we're seeing the tenure of our employees, which was like 10 years when I first started, and it's down to 6 years today because we just see the churn with newer generation employees. And so I always tell my team, like, you have to prepare for the next opportunity. So if no matter what, whether you progress here at our organization or you progress by going to a different organization, if you don't have the credentials to apply for that role, like, how can we help you prepare for that opportunity? And so that's been a focus of ours for me and my directors, and then all the way through the organization. Every employee has a development goal tied to their performance evaluation because we want to help our team be prepared. Because it may be the right time for them to make the move, and we support them and we want to support their success. But we also want them to realize if they want to be the airport CEO one day, we provide all of our job descriptions, so every employee in the organization can look up my job description or any others and see, here are the experience and qualifications I would need to have to prepare for that opportunity. And so that's the angle we have taken, and that I take. I often say that I'm very lucky to be here, but really luck is that intersection of preparation and opportunity. Because if you haven't done the work to be ready, then you might not be able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, one of the things that you said also around this sort of the idea that some of your employees might not feel so safe. One of the boards that I serve on, they also are focused on this, and I agree with Erica. Not every organization is, but what they said their employees say is it's actually, they would say, it's not me, it's people in my family that are nervous, and people in my family that are scared, and people in my family that don't want to come out of the house.
Yes.
And those people, your employee brings that stress to work as well. So it is so important that, organizations and employers are sensitive to what's happening in the lives and the in their employees' lives and their family and their households. So that's really astute. I love to be clear is to be kind. I've never heard that. I wrote that down because that is so like it is. It's actually unkind not to be clear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I can't take credit for that. I think Brene Brown might have said that, but I'm not sure. But Paul Myers brought that into our organization, and I just love it. So,
Me too.
yeah.
Yes. Those are, I don't have any other prepared questions. Anything that you want to leave us with that you haven't shared with us, Alexis?
I don't think so. I appreciate like all of the great questions. I just encourage people to make the ask. Like, don't ever feel less than or that you're imposing. But if you ever want to reach out to someone who you think you would just like to establish a connection with, make that ask, make that connection. I think you would be surprised at how often people are willing to meet with you or invest some of their time into that discussion. And so I would encourage everybody to do that. Thanks for the time today. And I look forward to learning more about the BEST group. It's pretty exciting, I think.
Thank
Oh,
you.
it is. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your time with the VEST members. I have to say that, in my 40 years, you're one of the most impressive leaders that I've ever worked with, and I am incredibly honored to serve on your board. So it's been wonderful to get to know you and work with you, and I hope to work with you for many years to come.
If you enjoyed the episode, share with a friend and don't forget to leave us a review. And if you're ready to take your career to the next level, apply to join our community of women eager to help you get there and stay there. Go to www.vesther.co to learn more.